Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I am truly outstanding, but for reasons that people in Cleveland are probably not going to want to hear about today. They are baseball-related reasons, so we're not gonna linger on how I am. Tony, how are you today?
Tom, the Mets did a thing. Yeah, let's not talk about it. Don't want to hurt people's feelings. Don't want to get your hopes up that the Mets will actually do anything with it because they still don't have pitching, but whatever. You know,
They got a pitcher in that trade too. Pretty
whatever. Let's
We're
not
not,
talk
we're
about
not
it.
here to talk about that. We'll just wait till they trade for Chris Bryant. Then we'll have lots of stuff to talk about.
Tom, don't. We're not here to talk about the past or the future. We're here to talk about the present, of which was a few hours ago when we talked to today. Tom, I'm going to get all of these right except for the Alabama players. Today was media day for the Alabama defense and the Ohio State offense, including the head coaches of both teams, which would be Ryan Day and Nick Saban. I got that one right. We also
Good
talked
job.
to the defensive coordinator, Pete Golding, who I think this might have been the first time I've ever seen him not in person because it's via Zoom, but I don't know if I've ever laid eyes on him before today. We talked with a couple of defensive linemen, linebacker Dylan Moses, Patrick Surtain, their All-American corner, Jordan Battle, the former Buckeye commit trader, who is now an Alabama safety, and I think another linebacker in there as well. So
Linebacker Christian Harris, defensive lineman DJ Dale.
And there was one other defensive lineman there, Phil
Mathis.
Thank you. And then on the Ohio State side, there's Ryan Day, Kevin Wilson, Justin Fields, Chris Olave, Trey Sermon, Luke Farrell, Wyatt Davis, and Josh Myers. And they nailed it. And they said a lot of stuff. There's not a lot to talk about what they said, however, so that's unfortunate. Basically, the Ohio State offense thinks the Alabama defense is very good. Alabama defense, however, thinks the Ohio State offense is very good. So two very different opinions going back and forth on what these two teams think of each other. Tom, clearly they hate each other.
Absolutely. This was two people in an absolutely ferocious argument about whether one team was going to score 12,000 points because they are so unstoppable, or whether that team would be limited to 2 yards of total offense all night because the opposing defense was simply too overwhelming. It is going to be quite an exciting evening to see which one of those two teams is right, or if, as I suspect, the truth may lie somewhere in the middle.
We'll see, Tom. I think Ohio State can hold this questionable Alabama offense to 4 yards. But that's before we even start prognosticating on stuff. Let's just make it clear. The game is still on for Monday, this coming Monday, right around the corner. Ryan Day was asked about the 53 player availability threshold, and he was asked, "Hey, man, how many players you got?" And Ryan Day's like, I don't know. And they're like, "Are you near that number?" And he said, I believe his quote was, "We've got plenty of guys." And so Ohio State looked good. I know in the last show we said like the number was 4 defensive linemen. That was a mistake by Pat Forty, who tweeted out that number. The number is actually 4 interior defensive linemen that you need to have. Quite a big difference there. But let's not start railing on Pat Forty for getting some information wrong. All right, that's not our place here. That's not what we do. So Ohio State looks like they're going to be playing. Tom, the question then is, hey man, how's Justin Fields doing?
Well, the answer on Justin Fields started before Justin Fields said his first word, when Justin Fields sat down in his chair and did not make a sound that sounded like he was passing a kidney stone. So that's already significant progress for Justin Fields vis-a-vis where he was in the moments after the Sugar Bowl. And this is one of these things where I feel like we've learned a lot more about Justin Fields, because he gave an answer today very similar to the answer he gave last week when he was asked about whether he'd be able to play. And, how his thumb was going into the Sugar Bowl. Hey, remember when Justin Fields hurt his thumb and that was a big thing and everyone was worried about it? Hey, that was a crazy long time ago. That way back then, on last Tuesday, I'm going to say, Fields said, it'll be fine by Friday. And you and I both kind of went, huh, It sounds like it's not okay now. And then it turns out it was fine by Friday. So when Justin Fields on Thursday said it'll be fine by Monday, I guess you have to take him at his word. I guess the ribs and whatever other miscellaneous stuff from the. I was never very good at the game of operations, so I don't know exactly what's in there. But ribs and whatever else, I guess, is all going to be fine by Monday.
Well, you get the Adam's apple, you get the funny bone. There was the bread basket.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something with a knee and there's a shin. I don't know the terms for those, but things like that in operation.
Remember when someone asked us about the Ohio State Medical School on one of our live streams a couple weeks ago? Neither of us attended the Ohio State Medical School, so there you go.
No, Tom, I'll digress for a second about one of my great disappointments as a child. There's a neighborhood garage sale, and it's just a couple doors down. I was 5 years old, went over there. Holy crap, they've got Operation for sale. And guess what? 50 cents. Yeah, I'm buying that. I'm buying that. I'm buying that. So I bring it home. I throw a couple, D batteries in there. The thing doesn't work. Dead. Operation. What's the point of playing Operation if you can't get the buzz and the zap? And so I was furious. Did I take that game back? I sure tried. But garage sales, no refunds. That's what the man with the rifle said.
Yes, our RIP Operation guy. That was Tony's story about a virtual medical cadaver during his time at Ohio State Medical School.
So Tom, before we wrap up,
we should probably talk about the 17 other people we talked to today. I mean, I'm throwing it out there. We spent all this time on Zoom. We might as well talk about it a little bit.
We did spend a lot of time on Zoom. It was almost 3 hours with Ohio State alone, waiting, not with Ohio State, waiting on Ohio State. One of the popular subjects today was just Justin Fields' toughness and everything involved with that, and the way he impressed everybody. And several people brought up the hit against Michigan last year and then coming back and throwing a touchdown to Garrett Wilson. I thought it was interesting when, Ryan Day told us that Justin felt better the day after than he thought he would. And Fields was like, yeah, it wasn't as bad. But then 3 days later, I felt a lot worse than I thought I would. And I think they say that after car wrecks, it's not necessarily immediately after. It's the days after where everything starts to swell up. But yeah, he moved fine based on what little practice we got to see, and the practice that we got to see was him sitting in a chair. Looked like he's doing pretty good, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, assuming he's literally sitting in the pocket, I think we can take what we saw today with him sitting in a chair and apply it to the game. Yes. If it's less literal, then I'm not sure exactly how well it will transfer. But I think it was, again, whatever it was progress. So that's fine. And based on what we have learned about Justin Fields and how he talks about things, I think all indications are he'll be fine to go on Monday. And based on how other people talk about Justin Fields, even if Justin Fields wasn't really totally okay with playing, wasn't really totally everything's hunky dory, he would probably be out there anyway. So I think that's one of those try and stop me.
He did also come out and say, I just want to clear the OSU medical staff of any, they definitely looked me over, and I don't want anybody misconstruing something or taking out of context what I said after the game, where I think a lot of people felt or his exact quotes made it seem like they basically just, looked at him, said, no, you're fine, and shoved him back out there. And that's not actually what happened. He did get looked over and it was evaluated. And so he wanted to make that very clear about that. I think my favorite part of Justin Fields today was when people were asking him about the Alabama game he played in 2018, which didn't play much. I believe he was involved in a fake punt. And when he went out onto the field as, the faker, the entire Alabama defense and special teams, whatever, all of the Alabama players are pointing at him and saying his name. And Tom, if you're going to devise a fake punt or any type of fake thing, once everybody is yelling at the mystery person or the person doing the faking, shouldn't you call a timeout or something like that? Or, shouldn't you, can you audible out of that? Can you, whatever you should not do is follow through with the play.
the some of the members of the SEC have not made great choices with regard to fake kicks in playoff games recently. Nick Saban had his own particular moment of glory against Clemson a couple of years ago with one of the worst designed fake field goals I think I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, that was definitely one of those like, Kirby, I don't know if that was the right call there, bud. Like, I think they might have seen that one coming and if only there was a way to know, such as the entire defense pointing and screaming someone's name, like, I think they might be on to you. Maybe. I don't want to. I mean, I'm not a football coach, so right. I don't want to presume. But when everyone's pointing at the guy who's about to get the ball and it's supposed to be a surprise, that suggests to me it might not be a surprise. And Justin Fields was extremely not that interested in talking about that play. He got asked about it. Mm-hmm. I was one of my great regrets during these 17 hours of Zoom today was that we didn't have people identifying the outlet they were with. It was just names, and it was like, I don't know who that is. So it's not an Ohio State person. I don't know if that's an Alabama person or some random SEC person or some random national something that I don't know of. But whoever asked that question, it was like, yeah, I don't know if you've read this situation correctly, but Justin Fields is extremely not interested in talking about that. And so good luck with your story. I don't know if you're going to be able to do anything about it.
I'm imagining. Remember when I think the Simpsons went into like witness relocation as the Thompsons,
mm-hmm.
and like the FBI guy or whatever was telling Homer, like, when I step on your foot, that this is the sign or whatever. And
I think Thompson, he's talking to you.
That's exactly what's going on when everybody's pointing at Justin Fields, and you got the coach on the sideline going, I think are they talking to us? No. That couldn't be about us. And so just a complete mess on that one. And yes, he was not interested in talking about it. And really, why would he be? Like, he's had 2 seasons, a Heisman finalist. Okay, yes, he played against Alabama. He didn't really play against Alabama. It was, at least when Trey Sermon is asked about playing against Ohio State as a freshman, there's some relevance there because, I mean, it was a big game, and he did play well, and he actually played a lot. But so that was Justin Fields today. I mean, I sure seems like everything is going to be well enough there. The intel we've gotten is that, no reason for concern other than, hey, try not to get hit there again. This was the first time we talked to Chris Olave since before the Clemson game. And God, maybe well before, I don't even remember. But he's such a quiet guy and really isn't telling you like all of his feelings. He missed the Northwestern game with COVID, and he said the quote was, "To get that tap on my shoulder was tough. Quarantine for 10 days in Ohio State's COVID hotel where everybody just gets sent unless they go home." And he did say it was tough getting back to practice, and he would get tired, and he had to sleep a lot during the week. He didn't get his legs back until Wednesday, and the game was on Friday. And so that was a couple of days of very important practice for him. But there was no necessarily any talk about, just how great it was to beat Clemson, because I think the thing is that wasn't the ultimate goal. And I know we've talked about that before, but I mean, he even said, you come to Ohio State to win a national championship. That's why I came here. And so, yeah, I'm sure it was great and it was fulfilling, but it was only so fulfilling because now if you get this last one, then it makes everything else very, very much sweeter.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team where it's like they beat the Soviets. Hooray! That wasn't the gold medal game. You actually have to finish the job. You got to beat Sweden, Finland, one of those countries. It wasn't Norway. It was either Sweden or Finland.
I was going to say Norway.
No, it wasn't Norway. Pretty sure it was Finland. Either way, doesn't matter. That's not what we're here to talk about. Wasn't Alabama either. For Ohio State, it's Alabama. And, they got over the hump. That's good for them. That is what they wanted to do. They had the score of that Clemson game on the score, on the monitors inside the facility all year. And that was kind of the dragon they had to slay. And it's like, okay, your princess is in another castle. So now you've got to go slay the dragon there. Like now you got to do the final boss. Like you got to the guy who you couldn't beat. Okay, you beat him. Now you got to go kill the final boss. And not literally, that would be illegal and sad. Don't do that. You have to defeat the final boss.
Thank you.
And so, I mean, this is very much like that 1980 Olympic hockey team. Like if you beat the Soviets and then you don't win, like, well, I mean, you did it sort of, but you didn't really do it. And, I think that for Ohio State fans, this probably, regardless of what happens on Monday, this probably should be viewed as a successful season one way or the other. I think there's the demand excellence sector of the online fan base that is, thinks that it's a high point of character to say that anything less than total success is utter failure. And it's like, that's not a great way to go through life. But I'm sure that this team does want to finish the drill. They do want to. And, that's the goal. I mean, the goal is beat Michigan, get to Indy, win the Big Ten, get to the college football playoff, win the national championship. They've done all that, all but the last thing. And also they didn't beat Michigan this year, but that wasn't really their fault. So, this is there was a little bit of, how can you focus again? How are you going to be able to refocus after Clemson, and Clemson being such a big hill to climb? But you would think that being able to focus one more time with everything that's on the line, and it's not like Alabama's like that they're a 2-touchdown favorite and Alabama's a team they're going to overlook. Like, okay, all the people who were saying you weren't going to beat Clemson are also going to be saying you're not going to beat Alabama. So this should not be one that they're overlooking.
Yeah, if they overlook this, Tom, that's that's a cocky team. They can overlook Alabama. Like, oh, we didn't expect Alabama to be so good. That was crazy. We talked to Chris Olave, said he came to Ohio State to win a national championship. Somebody else asked Wyatt Davis, like, hey man, and Dylan Moses, like, why all you California guys, or Najee Harris maybe the other day, is Dylan Moses from California as well?
Dylan Moses, I think, from Louisiana.
Okay, well,
I think
Najee Harris is from California. So they've been asking these California guys, like, hey man, why do you keep leaving the West? And Wyatt Davis said, to play for a national championship, you kind of have to. Like, it was just funny to me. Like, they all realize that you can't win a national championship out in UCLA or USC or Washington or Oregon or wherever else you're going to be. You've got to come to Ohio State or come to the SEC, or probably need to keep going once you hit Oklahoma. Just keep going. But it was funny. Like, that was one of the reasons, is that they know the limitations that are there, because what do you say? If you're going to put yourself through that type of commitment that college football requires, why not go somewhere for a national title as opposed to doing it for 8 or 9 wins? And Tom, I will disagree with you on one thing. You said this would be a successful season for Ohio State. A 7-win season is not successful. So that's just my thought. While I'm not saying that this would be a failure of a year, I do kind of require more than 7 wins.
7 wins in the season with a postseason game in Florida against an SEC team that they lose. I mean, this has got to be right up there with some of the great holiday bowls from the early John Cooper era, I think. Although for some reason it feels more successful than some of those early 1990s John Coopers. Maybe this is one of these great inflation things. I'm not sure. I don't know what could possibly be causing that, but yeah, it does. It feels a little bit better than some of those early 90s Cooper teams.
Yeah, Tommy, you can do with your feelings, right?
Stuff them in a sack.
I did want to ask a couple people about Mayan Williams, because I like to talk about him. Plus, I'll write about him after the season. And again, the bowl media availabilities is when you're supposed to get all of these questions in about the young players, and we can't really do that. And I'm like, heck, I'm doing it anyway. Like, I'm not going to write about him this week, but the thing is, then everybody else is also going to write about him at some point. And if I'm not first, then do I wait even longer? But I thought it was funny that Trey Sermon and I think Josh Myers both said that they love to watch him run. It hypes everybody up. And just to see him grow this year, and he's taken on this role where he's going to play on Monday. He's going to play in a national championship game. and everybody expects him to, like, the moment won't be too big for him, and he's not going to have to do a lot, assuming. But there's been no, like, other guys. You're like, well, can Steel Chambers hold on to the ball? Can this guy do this? Master Teague last year, was it? Clemson wasn't his thing. Like with Mayan Williams, you're like, well, I'd like to see him get some second quarter carries, and it's like you have this confidence in him, and his teammates love him, and they love the way he runs. And Josh Myers, which maybe I don't know if this is the greatest compliment a center could pay or the worst, said that if Josh Myers, if he himself were a running back, he'd like to think he would run a lot like Mayan Williams.
I think that's good because that feels a little bit like a fantasy camp thing. Not that if he was a running back currently built as he is, that's how he would look. I think it's more if that's how I would like to look. So I think that was supposed to be a compliment. But yes, I did like that. Josh Myers had a bunch of interesting stuff to say. We can get to the Paris Johnson stuff in a minute.
Yes.
That was pretty spicy. Speaking of stories, we'll probably be writing not that long after the national championship game. But yeah, Mayan Williams, I think, is someone who is very clearly on track to become one of those Ohio State fan favorites. I mean, DeJuan Jones is probably one of those guys already. Mayan Williams seems like he's a little bit like running back BB Landers, where he's kind of short, squatty, but like shockingly athletic for someone who's built like a fire hydrant. And that makes you A, memorable, and B, entertaining, because it's like, oh, this is not like just someone who has come off of the Ohio State running back assembly line. This is a dude who's not 6'2" or is not 210 pounds and runs a 4.4. He's a little short, squatty dude who looks like he's built like a brick wall, but is also incredibly shifty and just kind of fun to watch. And he is the kind of running back who is going to try to run you over. He is going to try and step on your face. And that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of running back that people like watching. That's fun. So I would guess Ohio State fans will be okay with seeing him in the game, because if they see him in the game, I mean, when he was in the game against Clemson, that was generally because Trey Sermon had just run for a long way and needed a little breather. So Ohio State fans are probably going to be okay with Trey Sermon running a long way against Alabama. And if that means Mayan Williams gets in the game, like, yeah, great, all the better.
Josh Myers also was asked, hey, man, have you thought about, have you made your decision on the NFL? Are you coming back? He said he will announce his future intentions on January 12th, which I believe is the day after the game, and will probably happen when we are flying. And so somebody will have to write that story in the air. So just look for that one. We'll figure out exactly what he's going to be doing. I know everybody expected him to be leaving. And now maybe things have changed. I still kind of expect him to leave, don't you, Tom?
I would think so. I would expect so, but you never. I mean, I don't know what he's heard in terms of NFL draft grades. I think he's had a pretty good year overall. I think it wasn't necessarily, he wasn't a first team All-American, but I think he's had a pretty good year. And there's also a certain amount. I mean, this is his fourth year, so he probably came in thinking he would be a 3-year guy, and now he's been a 4-year guy. But I expect him to leave, but I guess I wouldn't be totally shocked if he came back.
I think this is a really tough year to evaluate harshly draft prospects based on everything that's gone on this year, the jilted season, the starts and the stops, and just all of the mental aspect of it. And so I know I see a lot of criticism from scouts I know about some Ohio State players, and it's like I tell them, like, how this is not the best year to be evaluating players, and it's going to make scouts get some stuff wrong that they've never gotten wrong before, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are infallible, and so it's going to be tougher to judge and determine if these guys are going to be all pros. And I think coming back is a wise decision for a lot of guys this year, unless, of course, that feedback is where you need it. And again, who knows how much stock they're putting into this year compared to last year? Like, do you put more in last year and then project it forward if you don't necessarily see? I think it's just going to be tough all around. It's same with recruiting. We're not getting to see guys in camps. as well, and not even getting guys on campus before you allow them to sign. So it'll be fun over the next few years is to see how all of these draft prospects fail and all of these transfer portal kids transfer out and transfer in. You know, watching people fail, Tom, is always fun. We know that. That's what we live for, right?
It's the very best thing. What is more exciting than watching others fail to do things that we also cannot do? It's like, exactly. Oh, good. It's like it's a stars, they're just like us thing. Like, oh, yes. Look, right. you can't hurdle an Alabama defender holding the football either.
Loser.
Same.
Before we get to Paris Johnson, I do want to talk a little bit about the Alabama defense and the thought that, because when we look at them and expect a blowout, we look at the Ole Miss game, we look at the Florida game, and
do you mean a shootout? You said blowout. I think you mean shootout.
Shootout. Yes. Oh no, you guys are learning my my secret Ohio State pick. But yeah, a shootout with specifically Ole Miss that was brought up quite a bit, and how that was so early in the season. They've gotten a lot better since then, and I do think there is something to that where maybe things won't be as easy as maybe we think they are. Not that it's going to be easy, but like points will be available, yards will be available. I think they are a better defense from then because Ohio State is a better defense from then. Every other team is a better defense from then. But where did that Florida game? Are you looking up that right now, Tom? Where did that Florida game fall in there?
The Florida Alabama game.
That was the conference championship game?
That was the conference championship game.
How long ago was that?
Not too far back. That was I'm just looking at, I was just Googling the Alabama Ole Miss score, and I did a double take, and I'm like, was this football or basketball? Okay, good. Football. Okay, good. All right. I'm looking at the right thing. That was October 10th. Yeah. The Ole Miss game was October 10th. So that was exactly 11 days before the Indiana game for Ohio State, right? Oh no, sorry, that was November 21st. But yeah, I mean, in terms of where it fell in the season, it's probably not all that different from the Ohio State Indiana game. And so, and to your point, yes, the Florida game was the same day as the Ohio State Northwestern game. So, yes, I think things have probably improved both for the Ohio State offense and the Alabama defense since December 19th. But there's a tendency, I think, right now when you're looking at these games to only look at the things that agree with your opinion. Mm-hmm. There's probably a broader comment to be made there, but we'll just leave this on football right now and say that you have to, if you're going to say, well, Ohio State's so much better than they were back then, it's like, well, okay, maybe Alabama's better. Alabama looked a heck of a lot better against Notre Dame than they did against Florida. So, you have to kind of, and the other way around, if you're looking at Ohio State and going, well, they're going to think about how bad they were against Indiana, and now they're playing against Alabama. Alabama's going to score 900 points. Well, maybe, but this isn't the same defense that played Indiana. This is not the same defense that had issues kind of throughout the year. I mean, they just had I would say, it's weird to call a 28-point game a dominating performance, but they had a pretty dominating performance against Clemson in a lot of ways. So, I think that this is not quite as much of a 70-63 game as it looked like it might be if these two teams met, as of a few months ago. But, it's Alabama is both not invincible, but also Ohio State's defense is not quite as terrible as people probably think.
Well, because I hear people talking about how Alabama's defense has played so much better since then, and you look, and Tennessee 17 points, Mississippi State none, Kentucky 3, Auburn 13, LSU 17, Arkansas 3. These offenses are all terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the defense is going to get better and look better, but for me, like, you take all of that out, they're meaningless. It's that Florida game is awful meaningful. And the fact that they're still giving up yards tells me that they're not as good as that to me, that is the real defense. Not that they're going to give up 46 to Ohio State, but that they're capable of. They're closer to being that defense than they are the defense that gives up 3 points to Arkansas or 3 points to Kentucky, because those are bad offenses who can't threaten. Like Notre Dame can't threaten Alabama's offense. They've got a good running back. They don't have the offense to stretch the Alabama defense. Ohio State does that, And so yes, I'm sure they have gotten better, but they still have improved and still gave up 46 points to Florida. So Ohio State certainly has some offensive hope here, and I'm not expecting this this great Alabama defense, as we have said all along.
Right. This is not a team that is the greatest team in college football history. You will hear people say that, oh, that it's incredible. It's like their offense is extremely good. Extremely good. There's an argument to be made that last year's Alabama offense might have been even better than this year's Alabama offense. This is something that I was talking about with Ross Fulton over text, and I said, it's crazy that Alabama this year, there's an argument to be made that their second best wide receiver was just the runaway winner of the Heisman Trophy, and their wide receiver talent might not be quite as good this year as it was last year. But if you look at it, it's like, okay, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, like Devontae Smith was like the fourth best wide receiver on this team last year. And yeah, he's a better receiver than he was then, but you also had Jalen Waddle. And I think at most we're expecting Jalen Waddle to make a cameo in this game. So then it's really Devontae Smith and maybe a little bit of Jalen Waddle. And then, there is not a Jerry Jeudy in the rest of that group. There is not a Henry Ruggs in the rest of that group. And Mac Jones has been very good, but I don't think I think there is a reason Mac Jones was backing up Tua last year when Tua was healthy. So, this is an Alabama team that is very, 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 very good, especially in offense. It is not the greatest team in the history of college football.
That's your opinion, Tom. That's
it's a podcast. That's literally what we're here for.
was that right? So let's talk about Paris Johnson and what Josh Myers had to say about him. And it was very interesting the way Josh Myers went about saying this, because he was asked flat out, about Paris. And he said he's an extremely talented football player and an extremely talented offensive lineman. God has given him a lot, but he also has the proper mindset to succeed. And then he's like, I don't know if I should say this or not. And he starts to, go back and forth. He's like, if Paris isn't an Outland Trophy winner by the time he leaves here, he screwed something up. And he said he could pretty much step in anywhere on the offensive line and play. Later on, he said he'd be starting at 99% of the universities in America this season. And the reason he didn't want to, I don't know if I should say this, is because he didn't want to, gas him up and then have him get a big head. But he also said, but I also know Paris now, and I know that he won't let that happen. And it was just one of those things where teammates talk about the young guys a lot. That's why, like I said earlier, we like the bowl media availabilities in person, because this is when you ask about all of these young guys. And to hear him, it seemed like he could have gone on and on talking about Paris Johnson, but was like, you know what, for the good of the kid, I'm just going to say a little bit and then let everybody else find out later.
Yeah, and that's something I think we're both pretty cognizant of too, is, yes, these are college football players, but also the freshmen are like 18 years old. And you need to be kind of responsible with exactly how much you're hyping people up when they haven't, this is the old Urban Meyer line that potential just means you haven't done anything yet. Like, yes, Paris Johnson has a ton of potential. Guess what that means? Hasn't really done a whole heck of a lot at the college level yet. I think we both think Paris Johnson is going to be a pretty darn good college football player. I think we are extremely cautious about the comps we throw on offensive tackles at Ohio State, especially those from in the state of Ohio. I think I have a picture that could be led, from when he was a recruit, that could be led to, leads one to make irresponsible comps because of the person he is standing next to in that picture during one of those recruiting visits. But Josh Myers, after all of these, tiptoeing around, like, I don't know if I want to do this. It's just like, screw it. If he doesn't win the Outland Trophy before he leaves, he's done something wrong. It's like, all right, well, we just said that out loud, didn't we? Like, whoa, boy, that was whew. But yeah, I mean, you look at the talent that he has, and you look at, he got thrown into a game in the college football playoff against a pretty good Clemson defensive line. And it was like, yeah, he did fine. Like, he was fine. There was no issues. You didn't have a bunch of false starts. You didn't have a bunch of holding penalties, and he didn't have to play a ton. I don't know how many snaps did he play? 10, 12? I mean, not a ton, but enough that it was like, all right. Like when he was in the game, I was trying to get photos of him, and so therefore I'm watching him, and it was like, yeah, it's fine. Like there were no major problems. And to be a true freshman who is potentially, worthy of starting on this offensive line, and I think would have to be considered the favorite to replace Thayer Munford at one of those tackle spots, whether it's left or right next year. I mean, that's as a sophomore, like, yeah, that's a pretty good indication you're destined for some pretty big things. So yeah, again, like you don't want to get too far out over your skis with any of the freshmen, because until they do it, you never know. Sometimes I think from Josh Meyer's perspective, he doesn't want to. He basically said he didn't want Paris Johnson to start getting a big head, basically, and he said, knowing him, I don't think that's what's going to be. I don't think that's going to be the case. But you don't want to give, you don't want to have someone lose their focus. There's a reason that when they come in, they're recruited and then they're de-recruited. When they get to Ohio State, it's like, all right. And this is every program in the country, like, every good program in the country anyway. You get there and it's like, all right, guess how many stars you are now, hotshot? 0 stars. Welcome to Matt Drills. Have fun. Yeah. And now Paris Johnson will have to do it. He will have the opportunity to start doing it in spring ball this year once Thayer Munford leaves. But yeah, that is going to be one to watch. This is not a huge surprise that the number one offensive lineman in the country might be pretty good at football. But I mean, you've got him and Nick Petit-Frere, 2 top 10 overall in the nation players, as potential bookend tackles next year. It's like, yeah, they might be okay again next year.
Orlando Pace was the last Buckeye to win the Outland. Just
you said the quiet part out loud.
I know. I'm just saying. I'm just giving you trivia. Hey, Orlando Pace is one of 4 Buckeyes to win the award.
John Hicks, Jim Stillwagon, and Jim Parker.
I think you're correct.
Yep. I think I am correct.
Parker in 56.
Yeah.
Stillwagon in 70, John Hicks in 73. And of course, Orlando Pace only 1 year in 96 because Jonathan Ogden won it in 95, which
I mean, it's like, how could you possibly give it to, okay, another NFL Hall of Famer. Oh, exactly. Right, fine. Okay.
I forgive you. I forgive you for being wrong this time. So the last thing he said about Paris Johnson was like, he'll probably be a lot better than anybody else on this offensive line right now. When it's all said and done. And that's
well, one of them one of them's an All-American. Pretty much all all Big Ten. It is probably one of the better offensive lines in Ohio State history as a unit. So seems good. I don't know.
And Myers is a Remington finalist, maybe again. But that will, that's the Paris Johnson stuff. Something good to look forward to. I'm sure we'll probably talk about him during the off season. I don't know. It might come up. A lot of maybe we'll do a comp show. Like, who does he remind you of? Oh, I don't know. Thayer Munford, and just keep it recent. Don't go too far back. Jamarco Jones ish, something like Taylor Decker.
It is a high bar to clear for our most irresponsible show. That might be up there. The irresponsible comp show. Yeah.
There you go. Let's do that one. That one would be a spicy one. Tom, anything else from today that you want to touch on before we get out of here?
I did like the fact that Nick Saban didn't really want to be a college football coach.
Yes.
And he played under Don James, who was the legendary coach at the University of Washington. But this was at Kent State in the 70s. And Saban was there in the early 70s and graduated. And his wife, Miss Terry, was 1 year behind him. So he's like, well, we promised my parents that we would get married, but, we would both finish college. So it was kind of like, well, I had nothing to do. So Coach James wanted me to, give it a try. I was like, well, I got nothing better to do. And which is the start of every great story, by the way. and decided like, oh, I guess I like it. Okay. I guess I like this. I guess this is okay. And, I can't imagine what Nick Saban would be if he was not a college football coach. Like if he was like a copier salesman or something, like he would probably be running Xerox right now, or, I mean, like he seems like the type of person that would have achieved greatness in whatever field he ended up choosing. But yeah, I mean, I mean, speaking of irresponsible statements, I think the college football thing has worked out okay for him.
Well, given that he was also like from West Virginia, he may have ended up like becoming the CEO of coal, like just
the whole mineral,
entire
not
fuel.
just one company. Yes,
the entire fuel. Like I am the CEO of coal now. I did like how he said, yeah, coaching was, I found out coaching was a lot like playing, except you didn't have to run wind sprints afterwards. It's like, oh, it does sound fun.
That was a little bit of personality. What happened? What happened here? That was crazy.
We told you guys yesterday that he's a funny guy. Sometimes he's funnier than not as funny as he thinks, but he can make jokes. And I don't know that he was actually joking. He was just telling the story. Then he told it in a fun way. And so credit to him. That's probably why maybe he had a little bit of Diet Coke in him, had a little pep. And although it wasn't really a story with pep, but it was just funny. Like matter of factly, like told our parents that we were going to graduate. That's why they let us get married, and like, oh, young lovers, and it's just these young kids at Kent State. And then yeah, I guess I'll coach. What am I, like there's only 3 channels. Nothing else to do. So yeah, then he did it. And yeah, it worked out pretty well. So anything else, Tom?
I think that'll cover us for this. We'll let you know Tony and I are getting on a big old airplane and flying down to Miami on Saturday morning. So we will have a bunch of coverage from down there pretty soon. It's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait. It's going to be another bowl trip. I haven't gotten to do 2 bowl trips in a year before. I wasn't on the beat in 2014. So this is going to be exciting and new.
Tom, don't say exciting and new about trips. It's like the theme song to The Love Boat.
I know. What do you think I meant? Yes.
Although it's better than Gilligan's Island. So
that's true. At least they got there. Speaking of 3-hour misadventures, how about today's press conference Zooms? Hey.
Started at 3 and then got pushed to 3:45. Originally going to start at 2:45. Then they're like, no, it'll be 3. Then got pushed to 3:45 while we're all still on Zoom at 3 and just waiting. And then finally wrapped up by about, I don't know, 5:50 ish.
Yeah.
And that was just the Ohio State 8 people.
Yes. And that was, we had the Alabama 8 people for 2.5 hours before that.
Oh, man, it's a lot of Zoom. And here we are now.
I'm so
talking about being on Zoom.
I'm so tired of Zoom. I can't wait to do these podcasts in person and not have to be on Zoom. That is, I think, what I'm most excited about this whole trip.
Tom, who's on morning Scoop tomorrow?
Well, I have good news, friend. If you're tired of Zoom now, just wait until we hit stop on this and then hit record on tomorrow morning's morning Zoom. It's going to be Tony Gerdeman. Yes, can't wait. For I talk a whole bunch. We've got. I actually have a few other things we haven't even talked about on this one that we'll talk about tomorrow. Things that we learned today on those interviews with Alabama players and Ohio State players. So that'll be fun. And so we'll have that on the morning scoop on Friday morning. And then I don't know. I have been thinking like maybe we need to do like a Sunday morning scoop just since there's like a national championship. But I'm also a little concerned about setting a precedent that I don't want to have to follow through on. So that'll be exciting. We'll have a million Buckeye Weeklies, I'm sure, between now and the national championship game either way. So you'll be tired of us either way.
I'm just glad you have some other topics for the morning scoop that you're not just ripping off Buckeye Weekly for your little side project. So thank you for that. Since I'm the one to put this show together. And I did a great job of it as we sat here when you hit record and I said, hey, let's talk about what we did today. And here we did. We did it. We're done. A successful show as always, which also means successful preparation. So thank you all for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to check out BuckeyeScoop.com. If you're not yet a member, please become a member. I would not steer you wrong. I'm not that kind of person. Tom isn't either. I promise you. So check it out. I bet you'll like it. If you're already there, of course you like it. So thank you all, and we will talk to you guys later.